Well, g'day and welcome to another episode of Kiwi Car Life, and today we're going to be comparing my two personal cars. This is a 2006 Honda Accord EXi-S 6-speed manual, and this is a 1994 Honda Accord EXi-S 5-speed manual, and today I'm going to be showing you the differences in styling, interior, and most importantly, how differently these cars drive. The exterior styling of these cars really highlights just how much car design moves on in a very short space of time. Obviously neither of them are up to the standard of modern cars anymore, but this design came out just 9 short years before this one, and this is a very different looking car, certainly from the front end. The main thing you notice is just how much lower the front end of this car is. There's barely 10 centimeters, I reckon, from the bottom of the guard to the top of the bonnet. In this car, it's probably closer to 30 centimeters. Round back, I like the design of these cars fairly equally. The CL9 obviously has those really nice sort of individual elements in the lights, just like the headlights do, but the CD5 also looks really nice as well, with the sort of triangle lights as well, and the cute little twin exhausts at the back. But certainly one thing that really helps out the back end of the CL9 is the big chunky twin exhausts and the little lip spoiler that really ties in the back end of this car. So now let's talk about the engines and modifications that I've done to these cars. Starting here with the CL9, this has a K24A3 paired with a 6-speed manual transmission. Stock, it makes 140 kilowatt and 233 newton meters. Now the modifications I've done to the engine, it has a Serge Bo tune, which you can check out by clicking up here, and it also has a lovely sounding Yonaka Catback exhaust that you can also check out by clicking up here. This car, on the other hand, has an F22B3 stock. It makes 104 kilowatt and 190 newton meters, and it's paired with a 5-speed manual transmission. Now the only modification to the engine, it has a Simota cold air intake, which makes it sound absolutely fantastic, but otherwise it's pretty much completely standard. Other modifications to these cars, obviously both of them are riding on lowering springs. This one has very comfortable Tein S-Tech lowering springs, and this has very uncomfortable Skunk 2 lowering springs. This one is also riding on 17-inch Yokohama Advan TC touring wheels, and this is riding on 18-inch Sparco DS1 wheels. Well, here we are in the interior of the CD5, and my goodness, it's like taking a step back in time. I mean, for starters, everything is grey, whereas in the CL9 they moved to a much more sort of black design. You push the indicators, it's very mechanical and clacky, and you push the air conditioning buttons and you feel physical things moving behind the dash. The gauge cluster is so simple, it's completely foolproof, and I love the fact that it still has the original tape deck radio in it as well. It's a very nice touch. The CL9, my goodness, this interior is leaps ahead of my old 1994 Accord. I mean, the steering wheel, for starters, it's leather wrapped. It's a 3-prong design instead of 4. The buttons on here actually feel like they're screwed in properly. And oh my, the shifter. Is it not one of the greatest parts about this car? It just feels absolutely incredible. And even just simple stuff like the handbrake. Driving the CD5, the intake noise is just straight up aggressive. And unlike with my CL9, you put your foot down on this and you get the noise, but then you back off and it's dead quiet again. The other thing that I really like about this is the handling. It really is absolutely supreme. And you know, if you park these cars next to each other, you can just see how much lower and flatter the bonnet is on this CD5. And as a result, it translates to a much lower center of gravity, and so this car just feels far more nimble and light on its feet than my CL9 does. Throttle response is instantaneous, you know exactly what it's doing. It just feels incredibly analog and connected to drive. Now, my complaints are, it doesn't have a lot of power. The engine becomes very wheezy at the top end, whereas my CL9 just is power all the time, right to redline. In a lot of ways, on a road like this, it actually, in some ways, makes more sense than the CL9. It's got just the right amount of power, where you won't get yourself into any trouble, but you can hold your speed really nicely through the corners. And like I said before, you know, a low center of gravity means that it just corners flat and level, which is really awesome. I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind when I jump in my CL9 again, because I haven't driven that thing in a while. But mate, this thing's pretty darn good on a back road, man. That's an awesome car. Alrighty, so I've just jumped out of the CD5 and here I am now in the CL9, and if I'm honest, things aren't quite as good as I was expecting. This car weighs nearly 200 kilos more than the CD5, and it really shows on a road like this. The steering feel was still great, but the throttle response is just not quite there, and it just generally feels like a bigger, heavier car. And if I'm honest, my main complaint is the gear ratio. Second gear is so long that on a road like this where doing anything more than about 70 is just straight up reckless, you really notice that you just can't ever really get into the power band, and it starts to get a little bit annoying. When you're driving on a really tight, narrow back road like that, if I'm honest, I think I'd rather be in the CD5. But where the CL9 really excels is out here. If the CD5 is a back road barnstormer, then the CL9 is a motorway blaster. This car is an absolute beast on a nice wide straight bit of road like this, man. Suddenly the annoying stuff that annoys you on, you know, tight twisty roads like the rev hang and the long gears and the sort of lack of throttle response, it doesn't annoy you so much, because out here you're never really in the lower registers. You know, you always have the option to keep the revs up if you want. So when you're using the third, fourth, fifth gears, it's way more enjoyable. Oh, is that not one of the most incredible four-cylinder sounds you will ever hear? Wide, swooping corners. Oh, where you can really open the taps in second gear and actually get it up into the power band. Oh, the handling's good. Hear the VTEC. It's not too noticeable, but oh my gosh. Man, that CD5 sounds good, but this, oh my giddy arts. Out here, this car, for what you can get these for, is one of the all-time greats. That's 8,000. What this has kind of shown is that sometimes it's not what car you drive, but it's where you drive it. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Kiwi Car Life, and I will definitely look forward to seeing you again next time.